What's up, YouTube? So yesterday I took a trip up to Grand Rapids, Michigan, where I picked up this brand new barrel evaporator for maple syrup from Bassett Maple Co. So this thing should be far and away better than the turkey fryer that I did sap on last year. So this morning we're going to get her unloaded, we're going to get everything put together, and we're going to put this thing to the test and see how much sap I can boil. So here is the unit all put together. It's got a nice smokestack, butterfly valve back here for regulating airflow. It's got a warming tray on the top with a ball valve that you can drain into the to the main evaporator tray, which is below it. And the evaporator tray over here has a ball valve as well for easy emptying. Front door here for loading your wood in and getting it started up. So one last thing to do here is I'm going to clean these pans out really good, and then I'm going to filter some sap into there, and we'll get to boiling. Alright, so this might not be the most efficient way or the best way to do this, but I'm still relatively new to the syrup game, so this is how I have been doing it. For the initial filter, what I do is I put a filter over top of an empty bucket, and then I take my bucket that's got my sap in it, and I just kind of gently, slowly pour it in and let it run through that filter. That way all that's left in this second bucket here is clean sap. You don't want to go too fast, otherwise you'll overload the capacity of the filter. Alright, so now everything that should be in this bucket here is good clean sap, and that is ready to be poured into the evaporator. Alright, this should be enough sap to get us started. It is very important to remember to put sap in this evaporator pan before you start your fire. You do not want to pour sap into a preheated pan for obvious reasons. It will cause the syrup to immediately gum up and cause a lot of headache for you. So definitely want to make sure that you've got plenty of liquid in the pan before the fire is started. Alright, so now that we've got our pan full, enough to get us going at least, we may add more later. What we'll do here is open this door. I've already got some newspaper and some wood in here, so we'll just get this fire going. Make sure that this butterfly valve on the back is open so that you can get airflow through it. Alright, so we got a little slider valve down here to regulate your airflow. You might need to play with that in order to get your fire going and get it to the optimal temperature. So right now I've got it where it's going pretty good. As you can see, I'm getting a good amount of smoke coming out of the top here. So once you get a good heat built up, you'll start to see a heck of a lot of steam coming off of it, and that's a good sign. We're not quite to a boil yet, but a lot of the water is coming off of the sap in the form of steam right now. Over the course of the last few hours, I've managed to collect another 4.5 gallons of sap. So I am going to add that into this warming tray up here. At first by ladling, and then once it's to a more manageable pouring level, I'll pour the rest of it in just straight from the 5-gallon bucket that I have it in. Alright, it's really important here to make sure we keep this fire going nice and hot. I kind of let it die down a little bit I had a boil going and I lost it. So right now I need to focus on getting that built back up so I can get to bed at a reasonable time tonight. So as you can see, we've got a rolling boil going here now. I've gotten to the point where I've drained everything that I put into that warming tray earlier into the main evaporator pan. And as far as I can see, we've got maybe about another hour left on this. It's gotten pretty dark out here, so it's definitely a patient man's game. This takes hours for sure. I'm about 7 hours into this boil, although I have added that other 5-gallon bucket to it earlier. So I would have been done a lot earlier if I hadn't did a second sap collection in the middle of the day. But I figured I'd take this opportunity to give a little bit of a side view of this unit here. As you can see, it's a 55-gallon drum that's just had a cutout basically made for the smokestack and for the evaporator pan to go into. So a couple things I just wanted to comment on. One is right here you can see, probably hard since it's darker out, but there is a little bit of discoloration that's starting to happen to the paint. This is a white barrel, and some of the areas that are getting heavily affected by the heat are starting to discolor a little bit. That's no big deal at all. That's to be expected. I've seen wood stoves and other things like that where the paint gets a little bit discolored, so not worried about that. It's no flaw to the unit at all. I did fail to have these two fittings here tight enough, so in a couple areas you can see where there is a little bit of drippage that kind of melted its way onto the unit as it dripped out, so I had to tighten those up partway through the run. No big deal, just a few drips, nothing that I can't clean off of it later on once it cools down. And a little bit of, it looks like some type of tar that kind of dripped down from the seal around the smokestack, the base of the smokestack. That kind of came down a little bit. It hasn't had any come out in a long time. That started pretty early on, and I think it's leaked out all it's going to leak out. So once I'm done with this run and the unit's cooled down, I'll go ahead and I'll clean that up and clean the sugar on the other side up, and be no worse for the wear. All in all, I got to give a huge shout out to these guys, Bassett Maple Co. They've really set me up here with a good unit, a good evaporator. It's going to save me a lot of money in propane and probably a lot of time having to run up to the store and refill propane tanks and having to babysit the thing constantly. This thing, I stoke the stove up pretty good, and I can go work on other things, go in the house, eat dinner, do whatever, and really it requires minimal maintenance to come out and check it until it starts getting, you know, further down on its boil. So yeah, really impressed with this. We are just about down to where I am ready to pull this pan and transfer what's remaining in it into a smaller pot to finish up on the stove. That's called the finish boil. You take the remaining tiny little bit before it's to the sugar content to be quite considered syrup, and you finish it up on the stove where you have a more controlled environment. So here in a few minutes I'm going to take this pan off. I'm going to move it over and set it at this table that I have back here, where I will then transfer what's left in the evaporator pan into that pot. Here we go. I'm going to try running this through a filter and putting it in the finish pan. So there we have about 12 gallons worth of sap evaporated down into just a little bit over a gallon probably in this pot. So this will get finished up on the stove, and that'll be another job for another day. So I will actually put that in another video, along with how I check sugar content and end up jarring it for storage. So if you've enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel, hitting the like button, leaving a comment, maybe with some content that you'd like to see. Thank you very much for watching.